Part 1. A storm begins in the heart of Africa. In Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traoré stood before an excited crowd. The African sun beat down on the square, but the people listened with eyes blazing. Africa will no longer kneel. We will speak, and we will be heard. He raised his fist to the air. The speech, which began as a call for African unity, ended in a surprising tone. Let those who call themselves world powers hear this. Israel must explain its role in Africa. Prime Minister Netanyahu, you have 72 hours. The crowd roared. Cameras captured the moment. Within minutes, news outlets from Al Jazeera to CNN had broadcast Traoré's bold statement. Twitter and TikTok exploded. Traoré challenges Netanyahu. African lion roars at Israel. It was unexpected. Israel had maintained quiet relations with much of Africa, through trade, tech, and occasional diplomatic support. But no African leader had ever directly challenged the Israeli Prime Minister so publicly. The countdown began. Part 2. Global shock and a deafening silence. For the first 24 hours, Israel remained silent. In Tel Aviv, journalists crowded outside the Prime Minister's office. Netanyahu attended a security briefing but offered no public response. The world speculated. What did Traoré mean? Was it about intelligence operations in the Sahel? Arms deals? Alleged mineral exploitation? In Nairobi, Kenyan journalists debated Africa's right to demand accountability. In Kinshasa, students painted murals of Traoré and labelled him Africa's voice. In Washington and Brussels, diplomats grew nervous. By hour 48, hashtags like #TraoréChallenge, #AfricaSpeaks, and #NetanyahuRespond trended globally. Still, nothing from Jerusalem. Part 3. Netanyahu breaks the silence. Hour 72. The world held its breath. A podium stood in front of the Knesset. Cameras rolled. Netanyahu stepped out in a dark suit, unusually quiet. I have heard the voice of Africa, he began. And I will respond not with words alone, but with a vision. He announced a new geopolitical initiative, the New Equilibrium Initiative. It included $2 billion in development funding across West Africa, a new Israel-Africa Technology and Education Alliance, immediate talks with the African Union, a historic visit to Burkina Faso by Netanyahu himself. The room was stunned. Applause broke out. International media scrambled. Netanyahu responds with bold diplomacy. Is this a turning point in Africa-Middle East relations? But in Ouagadougou, Traoré had not yet responded. Part 4. Traoré's next move. Back in Burkina Faso, Traoré gathered his top advisors. His face was thoughtful. We did not shout to be bought, he told them. But the world has listened. Now, we must decide, do we lead, or do we follow? He called an emergency summit of 17 African nations. Leaders from Mali, Niger, Senegal, Ghana, and the Congo arrived. Discussions went long into the night. In the final press statement, Traoré welcomed Netanyahu's initiative, but with caution. Africa welcomes allies, not saviors. This phrase became a slogan. It appeared on shirts, posters, and social media bias across the continent. Part 5. The rise of the Global South voice. In the following weeks, several events happened quickly. A new media platform, AfroGlobal, launched in 6 languages. Students across African universities held forums about neocolonialism and foreign aid. The African Union proposed a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. Netanyahu's visit to Ouagadougou was received with mixed feelings. Some cheered. Others protested. But Traoré and Netanyahu met face to face. You heard us. Now walk with us, Traoré said. Let's build something real, Netanyahu responded. Photos of their handshake went viral. They became symbols of an unexpected alliance, and beginning of something far greater. Part 6. Shadows and Diplomacy. Behind closed doors, not everything was smooth. Some European powers saw the shift in alliances as a threat. France issued warnings. The US State Department sent envoys. China offered investment. Russia sent subtle signals. But Africa, under Traoré's voice, now spoke with unity. A new doctrine, African sovereign diplomacy, was ratified. It outlined respect for African leadership in global policy, no foreign military bases without parliamentary consent, complete transparency in tech and trade agreements. Netanyahu, navigating both opportunity and risk, signed Israel as the first partner under the new doctrine. Part 7. The people respond. In Tel Aviv, young Israelis debated Traoré's words in cafes. In Lagos, artists composed songs titled 72 Hours. In Addis Ababa, murals depicted Netanyahu and Traoré as chess players on a globe. In Paris and London, protests emerged supporting Africa's new role. The world had changed in less than a month. Part 8. From personal challenge to global change. Traoré's initial challenge had never been just about Israel. It was about Africa demanding a seat, not asking for one. And Netanyahu, regardless of initial intentions, had responded in a way that triggered global waves. Academic circles referred to it as the new equilibrium moment. New alliances formed. Brazil, South Africa, and India announced the South-South Pact. African tech hubs received investments from Southeast Asia. The IMF and World Bank began restructuring African debt terms. Part 9. A lasting legacy? Months later, Traoré addressed the UN. He stood tall. We did not raise our voices to provoke. We raised them to be heard. Netanyahu sat among the dignitaries, nodding. The applause was thunderous. From a single challenge to a global rebalancing, the story of 72 hours of silence became a chapter in history books. Not about confrontation, but about recognition, about dignity, and about the power of one voice that refused to be ignored. Chapter 14. Echoes in the Security Council. In New York, the UN Security Council convened in emergency session. The room, often stagnant with protocol, now buzzed with urgency. Traoré's address and Netanyahu's response had not only captured headlines, they had pierced the diplomatic shell of silence that often surrounded African issues. For the first time in decades, African diplomats found themselves at the center, not the periphery. One delegate from Kenya rose. Voice steady. Africa is not asking for permission to lead. We are informing the world we already are. The chamber fell quiet. The weight of his words settled like dust in sunlight, undeniable, visible, and impossible to ignore. Chapter 15. The Agreement of the Unexpected. In a surprising twist, behind closed doors in Geneva, Israeli and Burkinabe envoys drafted what came to be known as the New Equilibrium Accord. It wasn't merely symbolic. It included provisions for mutual technology exchanges, strategic infrastructure development in West Africa, joint forums on global economic reforms. Netanyahu, once seen as responding under pressure, now appeared to be steering a vision. And Traoré, fierce, principled, and unyielding, had carved a seat for his people, not only at the table but at the helm. The world watched. A new balance was forming.